Hello everyone, my name is Dmitry. I'm from Reliance Utilities, and today we have a privilege of speaking to Simon Bridges, current CEO of Auckland Business Chamber and former leader of National Party and former Minister of Energy, and currently running a lot of conversation with the energy leaders in the industry around energy crisis. Welcome.
Hey, great to be with you, Dmitry.
Thank you
for having me here at Reliance Utilities.
Thank you.
Great.
So first thing we all want to find out is, we all hear this phrase, energy crisis. What is this all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was just thinking about it before. I mean, stepping back, we've got a big cost of living crisis more generally. I think it's a difficult economy, unemployment's relatively high. So all these things play into it. But I think it is fair to say that there's an energy crisis. And what that really means is, look, both there's a price issue and there's a supply issue. We have issues with both of those. And, ultimately that's terrible for households and consumers. As they struggle with other bills, they're certainly struggling with energy. But I think for business, it's a big issue as well, right? We've seen, I don't think it's dramatic to say that the deindustrialisation of New Zealand at a level that continues, because energy is one of those big inputs, and if the price of that and the supply of that is high, it's problems there. That's a real issue. Businesses going out of business, from SME up, for a lot of factors, but energy is definitely one of them. And then, as we try and make the most of a world where technology and AI are front and centre, and could mean a lot for us in productivity and efficiency terms, they're really energy intensive, and we're not able to make the most of them because our energy supply and with prices high is very, very constrained. So, I think there is an energy crisis. I think our energy system is broken, and the likes of you and I and other leaders and workers in the energy field and in business more broadly have been advocating for changes.
Right. And obviously, you and I, we are in this, in this discussion, and I work in energy business, of course, in the energy industry rather. Yeah. Now, to me and to us, it seems like it's a big deal. It's happening. But what I want to find out is, you as a CEO of Auckland Business Chamber, do you actually hear any concerns around energy from your members? Is it something that people actually worried about, or is it more of a manufactured kind of issue which is not that much of a bigger deal? Oh
no, it's a big deal. I mean, we're hearing from a bunch of different players. I mean, we are hearing about it from energy-specific businesses. So if you're an independent retailer, maybe if you're a lines company, and maybe if you're an energy broker working with SMEs, we're hearing from you and hearing that it's an issue. But we're definitely hearing more generally from I suppose what I'd call industry, manufacturers, the likes of big meat processing companies and other manufacturers and so on, doing real things in the real economy. And then, of course, from the rank and file of our membership, SMEs, small businesses, we survey them quarterly. And, for the recent past, we've had questions about energy, and I should be able to quote you the numbers. I can't. Maybe we could flick them up magically on the screen there. But they show very real concern about energy costs. Right. That is, in some cases, as I said, it's not overly dramatic to say putting some businesses out of business.
Right. All right. Now, were there any warning signs? Anything that we should have seen coming?
Yes, I think there were, and I'm not in politics anymore, and I'm apolitical. I think though, you go back more than a decade, and the system worked quite well. People talk about the energy trilemma, having a good, sustainable, affordable, and secure energy system. And we had that. Market was working quite well. A lot's happened in that last 10, 15 years. You've had much greater use of new renewables, if you like, not that new, but solar, wind, these intermittent sources. You've had a gas ban, which has had an effect. You've had other policies, significant policies like Onslow, which is meant to be a mega battery with hydro. that's caused real uncertainty in the marketplace. So a lot has changed since then. They were the warning signs, I'd suggest. And then I think, one thing I haven't talked about, but it's just worth doing is if you look at the numbers, I mean, they tell the story. And again, they're flashing lights on the machine, if you like, in pricing. You've got a situation where prices in energy, a megawatt per hour, have gone $70, $80 pre-COVID to a 2021 average of about 150, I think, dollars since then per megawatt hour. Last year or so, 190. So that's a doubling or more in wholesale energy prices that filters through to everyone. We see from Transpower and their figures that I think are pretty independent. We can trust them, that anticipated new supplies come on very heavily in the last year or so. So whilst a lot of people pinned their hopes on lots more solar and wind and these things happening, projects all over the place, they haven't. 70-80% fewer than was anticipated. That's a real issue. And then I think another fact or figure that's worth mentioning is, whilst that's been happening, higher prices, which should mean more would want to supply it, put in solar and so on, but aren't really. There's a bit, but not anything like was anticipated. Those solar anticipated numbers, those renewable numbers coming back. The third one I'd say is, all the while that's happening, we've seen big growth, strong growth in our gentailers and the biggest four power companies that are both the generation and the retail of electricity. They've gone from about, look, I can't remember that, but now they're at 87% of the retail market, just four companies, and 92% of the generation. So, they are all some warning signals, but then I think right now some if it was a machine, some flashing lights saying, no, something's not right here. There's problems.
Right. Do you see any gaps in legislation that could have, if not prevented it, or at least eased it a little?
I do. I mean, I think the group we're with, in our Northern Infrastructure Forum, we call it, that's thinking a lot about energy. We're talking to, the Minister of Energy and Resources, the Associate Minister of Energy and Resources, so that's Simon Watts and Shane Jones. We're sending them a lot of messages. There's a lot of things that could be done in a policy sense. A better single regulator. At the moment, there's a few, and you're doing bits and pieces. One big strategy from government, that gives some long-term certainty, and that other political parties could buy into. I think in truth, one that's got some controversy, but that is, for real, is some form of structural separation around those gentailers I've talked about, because at the moment it seems to me, there's a real conflict and a problem where you're in charge of supplying most of it to New Zealand and also selling it at retail level. That sets up some wrong incentives and interferes with the market, and I think there's definite room for reform in that. As I say, look, we've talked to the Minister of Energy and Resources. He's very sympathetic about the problems. He's given us a lot of listening, and he's saying, really help is on the way sometime, I think, before the back end of this year. So we're really looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
And do you think you mentioned gentailers, do you think they should have done something differently, or retailers, independent retailers should have done or could have done something differently?
I think the truth is they are doing what, is rational commercial behaviour from their perspective and for their shareholders. So I'm not critical of them. There's been stories just, in the last day or two since before we're talking about, disconnections for consumers and so on. They actually, by and large, they're very responsible in areas like that and do a good job. But I do think at a higher level, there's reform that would be highly desirable, would ensure a better, more abundant energy system. That's for government more than for them. What do we want? We want lower prices and more supply. you can't blame a business for keeping prices where they want to.
Yeah.
But I think government could do things to make a difference there and ensure they supply more at more affordable prices.
Where would this, you mentioned this, where would this line be? Because you would want to tread it carefully as a government, because you probably wouldn't want to get too much involved in the private businesses, yet it's an interesting industry which affects the overall country's performance. So where would this line be?
It's a really good point. Look, what critics of what I'm saying would say is, hey, come on, if you separate the gentailers, you will send a chilling effect on the marketplace. You're interfering with businesses that have shareholders, and you're really wreaking havoc with them. And there's something in that, right? I'd make sort of 2 points. Firstly, look, whilst there's something in that, on the other side of it, there is a great chilling effect on our overall economy, a real lack of confidence in our overall economy that comes from high prices and not enough supply. In terms of really said already, but deindustrialization, where our manufacturers are shutting down, fewer businesses, less vibrant, exciting business scene over time, inability to do stuff with AI. And secondly, I think the main view of the businesses that I talk to advocate what I'm advocating for, some form of functional separation. We're not actually saying, hey, you should get Iridian or Mighty River Power or Genesis and you should break them in half and separate them. What we're saying is actually maybe there should just be a Chinese wall between their supply, generation and the retail, so they can't use each other to offer preferential pricing from one to the other, from the generation, so that the smaller independent retailer gets a fair go and provides more competition and innovation in the market, so that someone who's wanting to do a lot more solar gets a fair go with that generation business, as opposed to the generation business sitting there at the back of their head, like I would probably, and says, you know what, I'm not going to give this new player more of a fair go around generation, because that means that my retail arm will have to use them and they're making money when we can, and we can keep prices high, So we're not talking full structural separation, I don't think. We talk more about something that's more functional and allows it to still be one business with one set of shareholders.
So it's more of a government sets up this rules of the game, but as far as the game goes,
absolutely,
it's down to,
and tries that and sees if that makes a beneficial difference. I certainly think, well, look, it's not a perfect analogy, but in telecommunications, this happened, what was it, 25 years ago or something, and that in fact went very well. We now have a very competitive market place in telecommunications, delivering real value for customers in New Zealand.
Right. You mentioned AI a few times, and of course it's on everyone's mind, AI, data centers. And if you look at China or US, they invest heavily in this.
Yes.
And of course it comes to have enough energy to supply to those data centers. Now, is it realistic for New Zealand to have, say, more Microsofts and Amazons of this world come in to build their data centers here, or is this just something that's not going to happen because we don't have enough power?
I think it's realistic, but we do need the power. You need a bunch of public settings, and I'm not saying this will deliver like nirvana and everyone will be happy and wealthy, but I do think, if you think about Auckland, but around the country, we as a country have productivity issues. We want to see stronger economy where our people can be paid more. Technology, innovation, with AI at the back of that, if you like, powering that is a really big part of the answer. But with energy as it is, we're just not going to see that. We need a lot more supply, which is really what I'm advocating. I think if we had that supply, look, what I hear, and I'm not, deeply close to it, but I do have conversations with people who know a lot about this, and in some cases consider it, having a big data center around Auckland or maybe at the bottom of the South Island, is, all other things being equal, New Zealand's a pretty good place. It's cooler, temperate, It has the skilled workforce that could be very good around this. There's a lot there to like about that. We of course have a few data centres in New Zealand, but there's no reason we couldn't have, quite a few more.
Right. Now, as far as solutions and predictions go, now what do you think is a short-term, mid-term, and a long-term solutions to this?
Well, it's a great question. I wish I'd give you an amazing answer. I need sort of AI-powered engine to give you that. But I think, broadly speaking, in a way I would say the short and long term are a bit the same. The government should get on with some of the actions I've already mentioned. We put out a 10-point plan. You can go online and see if you put in something like Energy Action Plan, Auckland Business Chamber, it would come up. They should get on with those. They are things that could be done in some cases in 3-4 months,
right.
Some cases over a year. And I think they would be very meaningful reform that would allow the market, I believe in markets, to get on and do the business quite literally for New Zealand. Because then, if the government's got the setting rights, I think, as I say, really repeat myself, but business could get on and do it. They would innovate and compete and find the solutions tailored for New Zealand. So I think there's a bunch of stuff that can be done quite quickly, actually. Of course, what's also true, if you think about solutions, is if you're an individual business, look, do things like join the chamber. We have a bunch of benefits for you with a bunch of companies, including Reliance Utilities. Talk to Reliance Utilities, that's a product endorsement if you like, but because I think, what that will allow you to do is get good advice and find the cheapest, best power plan for you. Get advice from others around what you could do to manage your demand. This is not necessarily using less, but maybe if you're on an EV or you're talking about your various appliances, they can be charged at cheaper times overnight rather than in the day. There's all these sort of things, and probably 20 others that talking to people better placed than me, like you, Dmitry, and your team at Reliance, like some of the consultants I'm aware of that the chamber could connect you up, how you as a business person can get a better, more affordable deal to literally keep the lights running.
Now, talking about green energy, now, what do you think the future holds for renewables in New Zealand? Is it realistic to go 100% green? If so, when do you think it will happen?
I thought a lot about this. I think, firstly, New Zealand is not a superpower in the military. We'll leave that to America and China and a few others. We're not a superpower in, the world of finance. That's maybe London and Hong Kong and New York and, again, a few others. We can be a superpower when it comes to renewables and energy. We have an abundance, right? Geothermal. We're very windy, let's be honest. Good sunlight hours. And actually non-renewables, reasonably prospective for oil and gas and so on. So we could be an energy and I think a renewables superpower. But we have to choose that and we have to do the right things. I think the goal is not 90% or 95% or whatever it is in our electricity system. I think it's like 140% of that, by which I mean, over time, not because I'm a rabid greenie or anything like that, but, more people with electric vehicles, more people with, their own power supplies and so on. That means that much more than just what we fuel with electricity at the moment, our cars, our transport, our industry could be electrified if you like. To answer your question on what proportion of our electricity system, I think at the moment, look, I could be wrong according to but about 85%. Maybe we can get that up a bit. I don't think in truth 100% is realistic.
Right.
And that's because in the end what the clever boffins would say is we need some firming, we need that coal or preferably gas there in transition over quite a long period of time to make sure the lights stay on when it isn't windy,
right.
When it isn't raining and there isn't much sun. Sadly that happens from time to time. But that's not the goal. As I say, the goal is actually getting a wider bunch of things, renewable, our transport, our industry and so on over time. Not in a day, not in a week, not in a year, probably not in 5 years, but over 10, 15, 20-year period.
Right. And what do you see in the near foreseeable future? What do you see happen to energy prices? Are they staying the same, relatively high, but stable, going up, they're going down?
I think there's, again, a couple of things to say there. Firstly, I think what the wholesale prices would say, the futures, and you'll know better than me. You're the person to ask, actually, so I'm going to get your answer after this, even though it's your interview. But I think they would say they're staying high, maybe even going higher, right? Which is the point I was making earlier. On the back of that, we should see more energy being put in because there's good prices for businesses who own generation, right? But we're just not seeing as much of that as we should. So I think that's a first point around prices. The second one is, look, we have a system that sadly is a bit like this. Whilst we've got growing geothermal and a bit of wind and a bit of solar, not nearly enough. If it doesn't rain, as we saw last year, around this period of the year, and the lakes aren't reasonably full, power prices shoot up.
Yes.
Fortunately, we had quite a bit of rain this year. It's not good if you're wanting to sunbathe or whatever, but it is good if you're wanting, good energy coming out of your meridians and contact energies and so on. But next year could be dry.
Yeah.
And that could lead to serious price spikes, which will affect consumers, households, but definitely affects those industries as well, where, the big power companies are going to them saying you need to ration, and they can't afford it, and that's a big problem. So it's unpredictable at the moment. It looks like it's staying high, maybe even going higher. But look, what do you think, and what are you saying?
We offer the same opinion that it will, if anything, stay stably high. Futures say they will. Prices will stay high. My personal feeling is that same time next year, or maybe closer to the end of next year, prices will be approximately 5 to 10% higher than what they are right now.
Right.
That's my guess. In a foreseeable future, we don't see anything that could dramatically impact pricing, so it comes down.
Yes.
Doesn't seem like there's anything that will actually. There's a lot of things that are happening, but how will I think it will take time to translate to the market.
Yeah. I mean, if I go back to my fourth form economics, right, where it's about supply and demand, we've talked to at the chamber some of the really big, as I keep calling them, gentailers. I appreciate them coming in. The chair of Mercury, the CEO of Meridian, the biggest, and others as well. And what they tell me is, it's taking a long time. These things do, you don't dream up energy in a day or a week or a year, but 27, 28, they have quite a bit more energy coming on. I'm sure that's right. Doesn't change my view that we still require reform to get to, significantly more supply and more affordable energy. But, that will have effect, but it's not next year. It's not the year after necessarily even.
Yeah. We've seen on the news, of course, we've all seen this on the news last year, several large companies, you would think, they would be the last companies that would affect, but several large companies closed their doors because of the energy crisis. What would your practical advice be to businesses so it doesn't happen to them?
Well, those big businesses, they have clever people, they have the resources to think about it. And, I acknowledge that in the case of some of them, those big pulp and paper businesses, a bunch of other manufacturers, there'll be maybe a few reasons why they shut their doors or they stop running for a period of time. But energy was definitely a big part of it, right? And in the end, that was probably the right decision for them. Energy prices here. Product only worth this, they needed to make those decisions. I think for the smaller and medium businesses, my advice would be kind of the things I've already said. You know, actually talk to the likes of yourselves, get good advice, and make sure they're absolutely paying and on the least they need to on the best plan possible. I think then they could, from the likes of the chamber and some of the advisors we work with, get good advice around things they could do to make sure they're managing their demand better. That doesn't. I'm not one who says they need to have their heaters off and their lights off and be working in the dark or anything. But there may be some smart things they could do to manage all of that, calibrate that right, which again could get them savings. There may be other efficiencies they can do, and good advisors could help them with. So I think there's some of the practical things you could do. But I think being members of the likes of the chamber does help, because it gives you a voice. And it helps us help you by getting out there with the Energy Minister and his other colleagues to ensure there's meaningful reform that over a period of time brings prices down and means more energy.
Yeah, with my 16 years of experience in the field, one thing for certain I can say that loyalty is not rewarded when you're in an energy industry. So I think it is a good idea for businesses to always, and not only for businesses, for anyone really. Next question I want to ask is, what if there was one thing you'd want to see the government do from a policy side of things? Just one thing. What would that be?
Well, as you know, we've got 10 things, but I won't give you 10 things. One, I do think it is some form of structural reform of the gentailers.
Right.
I do think they're not to blame entirely for where we're at. As I say, you've had a gas ban, you've had Onslow, you've had a bunch of changes in demand and energy supply and so on that is not. But I do think they are in the way of a better system for New Zealand businesses and households and consumers. So I do think that structural separation should be done. Right. I think it won't be perfect. There will be some issues and fallout from that. But I think overall more significant supply over time with more competition coming in, more retailers is a much better position for New Zealand businesses that are still here, that have managed to survive some reasonably difficult times, and the new ones that will be created, whether they're big data centers or they're just a laundromat or some other medium-sized technology business or something. Yeah.
And with the structural separation, if you were a betting man, what would you think? How likely is it going to happen?
Well, I'm not going to give you a really honest answer because I probably sound a bit cynical, but I am hopeful. I know, and you've been there with me, with a bunch of other business people. We've had Minister Simon Watts, Minister for Energy and Resources. I don't want to, betray what's been said, in rooms with others, and not for the cameras necessarily, but I get a really good sense from him that he is serious about the problem and he does want to see serious reforms. Right. So I think, that's also true for Minister Shane Jones, obviously in a different party, but the Associate Minister for Energy and the Minister for Resources, I think he's very serious too. So, I'm hopeful, right? But I'm also impatient, and we'll be waiting to see. We've been told before the end of this year what's coming. Right.
And last thing, what gives you hope around energy in New Zealand?
I think our natural resources. Right. I think our smarts. There are amazing people in this sector, clever people, a lot of innovation and so on. They just need the settings there to incentivize that, to bring that out. So yeah, I would say natural resources and people power are things we have in abundance. We just got to get the settings and so on to make it happen.
Right, sounds good. Thank you, Simon. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time and your opinion on and your thoughts on the matter. We really appreciate it. And for all of you watching, join Auckland Business Chamber. We have been members since early this year, and it's been a life change for us. So please reach out to us and to Auckland Business Chamber for advice around energy and around running the business.
I think Mike Hosking has got to run for his money. That was a grilling from you. Fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Cheers.